What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. I'm Joseph, and this week what we're talking about the one thing that architects need to know, like the most important thing. What do you think it is? We're gonna get into talking about it, and I'll see you there. Let's go. So with the snow, we had a problem with one of the projects we're working on. We don't know if it was because ice melted and might have gotten underneath the flashing and, got into the units, or there's something in the brand new roof that was just installed and there's a problem that would have allowed for a leak when snow sat up there and melted. So we're about to fly the drone, check that out, and see what might be the problem. Flying the DJI Mavic Pro. It's a great little drone. Gets it all done. Whoa. Let's rewind this thing. Right there. What we're talking about the one thing that architects need to know. All right, if I'm being honest with you guys, I'm flying this drone and I have absolutely no idea what I'm looking for. All I know is there's a leak and there's a brand new roof. Looking for dings, dents, holes, who knows what. But when we go back to those architecture drawings that we were looking at, the details, the roof, the overhang, the wall, the way that the building comes together, that's one of the most important parts. But the most important part is, how do you keep water out of the building? It's one of the things that I've learned working for the last 3 years and interning. It's like, our only job really is to get water out of buildings. So because of that, I called up one of my old friends from, first grade. I went to high school with him and everything, and now he started his own construction company. He is a GC, and he knows how to build buildings. Let's hop on and talk to him about why it's so important to keep water out of buildings, and why that's probably the one most important thing that architects need to know when they're practicing. Hey, what's going on, Daniel? Good to see you again. Just tell us a little about yourself.
How's it going, guys? My name is Daniel Marentes. I'm the owner of M&M Construction, LLC, general contractor, basically doing complete remodels and new builds here in Houston, Texas.
That's awesome. And so, as many people probably already have heard, Texas kind of went through this crazy snowstorm. And in Texas, we aren't used to these types of conditions and this weather. And for this long or that long of a time, it snowed and ice stayed on buildings and around buildings for about a week. And, with water basically hanging around buildings, that can be a huge problem. So why do roofs leak? Why does water get into buildings?
So something that I've found out over the process of the years I've been doing this is the key thing is flashing. Right. So a lot of people try to jump corners, or they'll use your shingles as a barrier for water from getting in. The reality is, as everyone knows, water's going to find its way. Water always, it finds its way in somewhere, whatever crack, whatever crevice it can make its way down to. So the biggest key of what I've figured out is properly flashing all your valleys, your angles, fascia, chimneys, and that's one of those things that I've actually just did today. We just did a complete roof replacement where the chimney had never been touched. The flashing was probably 40 years old, and of course, once we ripped off all of the shingles, where was all the rotted wood? Around the chimney. Mm-hmm. So one of the key things that I figured is flashing, and when you install your flashing, is making sure you're sealing that flashing as well with your proper silicones. And for me, those have been the biggest keys, is proper flashing and proper sealing of that flashing.
So what can architects do to help, mitigate this problem? Is it yeah, like I said, meeting with each other
Yeah.
from the very beginning, making sure that
Boom.
our details are drawn better, or what can we do to help you
I think,
build a better
I think
building?
you nailed it on the right on the nail right there off the back by collaboration. Really, that's what I've seen is probably the worst part of it. Is a lot of time architects or engineers, they don't really want to come to the site and really collaborate with the actual builders themselves and try to figure out what's the best way to go about building. From my experience, a lot of time architects, engineers, they want to build something as nice and as awesome as they can, which is great, and it always looks good on the computer. But when it comes to real life and actually putting it together, that's where the collaboration needs to happen, where people need to communicate and talk with each other and have meetings with each other to figure out how can we build this the best possible way and most efficient way.
So other than, like a roof leaking through an old chimney, where else do you see this problem happening? Like houses flood, right? It rains like crazy, it snows. I can imagine water coming in from every single part of the building, even if it's not just a home. What if it's a commercial building that has a large parapet that maybe the gutters aren't working or something, like where else do you see this problem happening?
So you also see the problem a lot, like especially commercial buildings that use TPO roofing material. The top edge, a lot of the times they don't put in the proper, again, it all comes down to the flashing and where the water is flowing. And wherever the water is flowing outwards is where you need to have your proper flashing and proper sealing of that flashing with silicone. A lot of times people install the flashing and nail it down, right? Where's the water going to go in? It's going to go into crevices of the actual nail that you put in, because the person who installed it didn't put silicone on top of that area after the fact. And that was something that I had to learn the hard way. Installing roofs, and the roof jacks that you'll have on a property have a metal flashing that goes over it. And, the roofers will nail it in, and then they'll put shingles on top. And the water will eventually get its way into the crevice of where the actual metal flashing for the roof jack is, and it'll be protected until it gets to the point to where that nail is. And then that's where it finds its way inside. But back to doing commercial with TPO, from what I found, is the flashing that's on top of it, all around it, is never properly installed, and it's always just nailed down without the silicone. A big thing that I figured out is the silicone. A lot of guys do flashing, but they don't properly seal that flashing.
So I think architects and designers in architecture are pretty ignorant when it comes to things like this, right? I mean, you imagine that nailing something down will basically seal the project. So because there is that disconnect from us as architects and designers and builders and people that are actually seeing it happen, we draw what we think is the right way to do these things. And it's important for us to actually know that firsthand knowledge that, just because a nail is going through a sheet of plywood and roofing and or TPO or whatever it is, doesn't mean that it's properly sealing, creating a proper seal to block water or whatever it is to come into the building. And so
dirt, all the above. No, for sure.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty astonishing from what I've, again, through my own experience, seeing how, again, engineers can really design something, a beautiful building. But when it comes down to how to properly build it and doing it efficiently is where, like you said, that disconnect really gets lost.
Yeah, that's right. That's insane. But that just proves that, we all have a lot to freaking learn about architecture and building, right? Sure. Because something as simple as someone improperly putting a nail through a roof can cause thousands and thousands of dollars of damage, and we just don't take that into account. We don't realize that. And I mean, that's just like the very bare bones simple example of it. As architects, we want to design these badass encased windows with a steel frame and things that start to pop out and give dimension to architecture and to these buildings. But because they're super unique and not just like off the shelf from Home Depot. They have to really be designed and thought through, because just because you send it out to someone to weld it, one, doesn't mean they're welding it straight. It's not plumb with the building. And second, you have to figure out all of the moisture barrier that goes around the encasement for these windows, and different types of flashing that apply for different exterior materials. And it happens, and we just need to be more well aware of those things.
Correct. And one of the things that I've recently been using that's been new to me as well over the past year, synthetic felt paper. Your older homes are just going to have your old school felt paper, which is going to be, that tar looking paper that can just rip by your hand. Where nowadays, all roofs are using a synthetic, which is basically like a plastic felt paper that goes over the underlayment for the actual shingles that goes on top of your decking. So one of those, for me, that's like one of those evolutions of how to install roofing properly and better and to last longer over time. Because again, I've replaced so many roofs where that felt paper, you're taking out the old shingles and that felt paper is falling apart, and then you have so much of the decking is rotted out, or has been eaten up by bugs, or just weather over the years. And so that's one of those next steps that I've seen that at least has shown an improvement. So a little bit of the bright side of it, there is some improvement in areas of that for using synthetic felt paper, which is above and beyond way better than your traditional felt.
Yeah, so like not only do we have to know how things are traditionally built and put together, it's important for us to stay on top of the new products that kind of help us and help the construction workers or the builders, whoever it is, finish the building and put it together. The other thing is, like, at least for me in architecture school, I didn't learn how to build anything. It was all on the computer, conceptual, it was fun, for a lack of better terms, right? And so now we're dealing with real people, real lives. It's someone's home, it's someone's business, and it's all in our hands. The way that we design it, the way that we draw it, and the way it gets built and put together. And I'm sure the same thing for you when you were in school, when you were learning construction management and stuff. It's completely different than being in the field and practicing in real life, right?
Exactly. Yeah, getting your hands dirty, laying out there, and actually, putting it together is completely different from, like you said, whenever you're in the classroom and you're just reading it off of the book and you're looking at the concepts of how to put it together and how to properly put it together. When in a lot of times, from my own experience, in real world situations, it doesn't always work the best. Sometimes it might be the cheapest way to how to build something, but it's not the most effective way, or vice versa.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of like you answered everything that I needed answered for this video, so I really appreciate it. What's the worst leak or water barrier problem that you've come across so far?
What I've come across so far is one of the big areas outside of the chimney flashing, because that's been my biggest notice is windows as well. Windows are never properly flashed accordingly. And a lot of times it has to deal with the flashing that they're installing and the width of it, the sizing of it. Because obviously, as we know, all windows are different, all different sizes, different materials. They can be custom builds. So it just really depends on, each flashing or what you're using has to change according to the window size. And a lot of times what I've seen as well are just guys trying to go in, just put in a metal flash. No, that's fine, that's it. That's either an inch, an inch in thickness, or, inch and a half when it should have been 2 inches or 2.5 inches. And at the end of the day, that really does matter.
Yeah, definitely. And that's another thing, kind of jumping back into what architect's role is. On paper, in the drawing, we just spec that it needs flashing. And we don't go into the research of what type of flashing needs to go on there, what size, what gauge steel this needs to be to properly fit the windows. And so part of it, yeah, it is up to the people that are building these buildings to have that knowledge to know, but we can mitigate that, right? We can learn more about the windows that we're putting into these buildings, the products that, are associated with those things, and spec them better, and basically learn how to fight water from coming into these buildings. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. I'm trying to reach 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and that's a big goal for me. Also, check out the Discord channel below. I'd love to keep this conversation going and help you guys out however way I can. Thanks again. See y'all later.